Welcome to Crimson Guitars, welcome to Dorset Guitar Museum, welcome to Great Guitar Giveaway, I suppose, but this one we're keeping. Okay, this is an incredibly interesting guitar. We were at a guitar show 6 months ago or so.
Back in November.
Sam here pipped me to the post and bought this guitar from a dealer, which I completely understand. So I had to then go and, I don't know, find a 70s telly to trade for this guitar and another one.
You planned it all along.
Yeah, absolutely. I just had to own this for the museum. Now, it needed a restoration. It is incredibly interesting. Tell me why I love this guitar. Apart from the fact, nope, shush, stop talking. It's got a die-cast magnesium neck. I had to walk over and just say the coolest thing about it.
Yeah.
The neck is freaking magnesium. I mean,
yeah, you don't see it all too often, do you?
all too often, ever. This whole video is going to be Sam doing his first restoration repair thing on the Crimson Guitars channel. Sam is essentially co-curating the Dorset Guitar Museum with me. He is even more of a geek about this sort of stuff than I am. I've spread my knowledge and learning far and wide, and Sam is like, aha! This thing, I love this thing. Tell us about this instrument.
So it was made in 1959 under the brand name National. Now National was a company that was owned and had instruments manufactured by Valco. They also manufactured instruments for Supro and Airline, which tends to be why you'll see a lot of the same guitars under different model names through the different brands. So this guitar in particular is, as far as I've been able to find out, a 1959 National Stylist, is what it was known as. Essentially, it's also a Supro dual tone, which is a much more, well, I say much more common model. They're still not very common, you don't see many of them around. But for all intents and purposes, it is the same guitar. As far as I can remember, David Bowie was quite famous for playing a Supro dual tone, albeit in white, but essentially that was the same guitar, just with a different headstock shape and obviously a different logo. I think the only other difference was possibly the tailpiece as well. But apart from that, they were all manufactured by the same company, in the same factory, the same woods, same parts, just different brand names.
It's intensely over-engineered. The neck,
it is.
There is no neck joint, as you will see. It's got a freaking great big bolt going through to the neck pickup. And watch the video.
Really cool, yeah. There's a couple of things on this that particularly stand out in the way that it's built. For one, you've got a vinyl covered body, which again, it's very 50s. But essentially we've got a solid wood body, which surprised me actually. I was convinced when I bought this that it was probably going to have a plywood body, but it's not. It's actually got a solid wood body. I haven't been able to tell what it is. It's, judging by the weight of it, it might even be poplar or pine. It is quite lightweight, but the chances are they probably went for something that was fairly cheap and low cost. That being said, this wasn't a budget guitar by any means. It was pretty up there in terms of price. That is reflected in its almost luxurious appointments on it.
The back of this neck feels cold. The whole thing feels heavier than it should, but it's not magnetic. So I think there's a solid aluminium truss rod, or stiffening rod at least, in there. But that genuinely feels colder than it should and heavier than it should, quite significantly. So, I don't know. Let me know if I'm wrong.
The other really quite quirky thing about this guitar is, as you'd expect from quite a few guitars during the 1950s, it has no truss rod, which is fairly normal at the time. However, in place of a truss rod, it's not got a baseball bat neck, fortunately. It has instead got this really quite cool aluminium core running through the entirety of the neck. So essentially what we believe is going on is there's an outer wooden shell surrounding an aluminium core which runs the entire length of the neck, probably up to about the neck joint, which is where we've got this great big aluminium block protruding out the bottom of the neck. So that will essentially be one long cast piece that's then got another giant bolt running out the bottom of it, coming into the body, and then that's secured pretty tightly against the body just by a great big nut and a couple of washers in here. Now, it's certainly not a conventional neck joint, to say the least. We were all a bit baffled when we first saw it, but I have to say it's stable, it looks pretty cool, and I get where they're coming from with the aluminium core in the neck. Now, when I did the fret level and dress, it wasn't straight, and that was a bit of a problem. You know, there's not really a great deal you can do aside from refretting the whole guitar when you've got a really uneven fretboard with no truss rod. But luckily it was just within consider acceptable. I managed to get one more fret level and dress out of this. I think after this it may well need a refret next. But you know, for saying it's however old it is, 1959, it has held up pretty well. It's done the job, and again, it's just one of those things you don't really see on a lot of guitars at all. And I mean, this is a pretty rare beast. Like I say, you usually see these in the form of Super guitars, if they do ever come up. The National ones, I did a bunch of research, and just even finding reference pictures of these was pretty difficult. There's not a lot of them around. So it's going to be a pretty interesting one to have in the museum here, and of course you're going to be able to come and visit, and if you so wish, give it a play. One interesting thing, like I say, is the fact that it's covered by vinyl, and they've done a really good job of it. You can't see any seam lines, and it just gives it this lovely, perfectly flat, albeit there are a few bubbles here and there. This guitar is quintessentially 1950s. It's very Art Deco. I personally love the colour scheme. I think that the pinstripe pickguard looks amazing against the rest of it. Same with the tailpiece and the gold hardware. I think it just really looks the part. So another thing that really genuinely surprised me when I was taking this apart is pickups. Essentially, what look like pretty standard humbuckers or humbucker copies are actually just single coils, pretty much sized to the same layout as a standard humbucker, but they are just single coils. If I take the cover off, we've essentially just got one pretty low output coil in a card bobbin, and then we've got two bar magnets below that, essentially where the second coil would sit if it were a humbucker. But that really makes the profile of the whole thing pretty slim, which means on the actual guitar there are no routes for the pickups themselves, they just sit directly on top within these pickup rings. This is going to be a bit precarious. The other interesting thing about them is the way they actually mount to the body, and this was a real source of pain for me in this project because this guitar had been messed about with quite a bit, and one of the things that really wasn't original was the way it was mounted to the body. The original screws which hold them in had been swapped out for some absolutely dreadful zinc-plated Phillips head screws which went straight through the pickup and directly go into two steel threaded inserts in the body, which is the way it was done originally, but just they were not original and it looked pretty disgusting, to be frank. So I've sourced some new screws. I'm going to turn the heads on them to make them look period correct, and then they go through and they're just held in place by a couple of essentially circlip washers that go on the underside of the pickup, and that just prevents them from popping back out from the other side of the pickup. I'm not sure how well they're going to do with vibrations. We shall see. I might have to put a bit of foam under them just to help prevent from rattling loose, really. But other than that, it's a pretty cool way of mounting your pickups. You don't have any screws either side of it. I believe, if I remember rightly, the earlier models, they had a couple of little grub screws on either side of a pickup ring, and you tighten them in against the side of the pickup cover. That would hold the pickups in place vertically, which again is a really cool way of doing it. Just something to note. That was a real pain. It took me a long time to do a fair bit of research just to find out how that actually works. It's interesting because in this time period, you know, a lot of manufacturers were doing things that were essentially to cut costs, whereas this, you know, the vinyl wrap body, the weird magnesium core neck, all of these things are just overcomplicating it, and in reality it would probably making the manufacturing time longer and more expensive.
Absolutely.
But, you know, the result is a ridiculously cool guitar.
There are certain people out there that tend to overcomplicate their lives and their work.
Not you.
Through no fault of their own. No, not me.
Not you. No.
Genuinely, I started the Dorset Guitar Museum because I realised that I'd been building guitars for 20 odd years. Let's not specify the odd at this point. And I was stuck in a rut and building stuff from my head without any external factors involved whatsoever. And I needed some inspiration and, you know, a bit of a kick up the butt, really. And looking at instruments like that where there was no established, this is a guitar bridge, this is a tremolo, this is how pickups are made. These pickups are insane. We're still waiting for a few screws.
Yeah.
There's some screws that are on order to just finalise this beautiful thing. But the way that they are made is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And the whole point of this is to educate and elucidate and obfuscate. It doesn't start with an E, does it? I've messed up my alliteration. I'm going to stop talking. Come on, this is supposed to be a short video and I'm talking non-stop. DorsetGuitarMuseum.com is not currently live, but it will be soon, or at least it's just a landing page at the moment. We're building what's going to be an experience for everybody interested in guitars and vintage guitars and learning how guitars are made and what can and could and maybe should be done. So yeah, check that out. All of it being funded by greatguitargiveaway.com, which is live and going strong. We've given away dozens of guitars to date, if not more, actually.
I think it's quite
I'd
a few
say,
by now.
yeah, north of 50, 60 so far, and it's not been going long. So check that out. Sam, you are a genius, and I've got it on camera now, so
There we go.
there we
Can't
go.
take it back.
Okay. Goodbye.